Hey, Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to the Men's Mysteries. I shared last time how I used to hate myself as a man, and I got a really interesting response to that, and it made me kind of think like, in regards to the response that like there's a lot of truth to what the response was about, which was that the person shared, how he came to realize that his mom had her own wounds around men, and that just because she was a wonderful person didn't mean that she automatically, like, that her opinions were infallible, that there were things to consider there. And I thought about that in relationship to my own work around healing my parent wounds, because a large part of healing my relationship with myself was healing the wounds that I had around my parents. For example, there was the not good enough wound around my dad. Like I was never good enough. So I would hear that. I would hear I was a disappointment or things like that. And in regards to like my stepmom, it was that feeling of like, well, I'm just the stepson. I'm not really what you want. And you have all this anger toward me, and I don't even know why you have all this anger toward me. And I didn't really fully understand it because it was anger toward someone else, toward other people. Here's the thing. We can't heal our family our family wounds without fully recognizing the impact that those wounds have had on us. But once we recognize them, we owe it to ourselves to heal them. And we're healing it for ourselves as well as for them. And here's the other thing I want to kind of keep in mind. Lately I've been sharing on Substack. It's kind of like, like I don't want to just talk about the work. And so I want to put a playful spin on this, that healing can actually be a form of play in some ways when we approach it from a place of levity and with a sense of heart, a sense of being willing to say, like, I am going to reclaim my relationship with myself and my inner boy or inner child on my terms. And part of that means that I'm going to play with that inner boy. And so for me, like when I think about like parent healing my parent wounds, it's not just healing the wounds that I have from my parents. It's actually giving my inner child the permission to play and to be himself fully in a way that he wasn't allowed to be as a child. As a child, I would have my nose in books all the time. And the reason why, I mean, I loved reading. I was very present with books brought me a sense of presence, and at the same time they allowed me to get away from things, right? They allowed me to go on adventures. And that was important to me. I needed that. I needed a sense of adventure. I needed a way to get away from things. But books were also the place where I hid myself away from the world and hid myself away from my parents. They were the one place where I could fully play because I was in control of the environment. I was in control of my imagination. So I could become the hero or the villain or all of those other things. And I think that when we look at healing our parent wounds, what we're really doing is we're saying to ourselves too, it's like, it's not just about, oh, I'm going to heal, I'm going to reparent my father, reparent myself as the father I never was. I mean, that's an important element of this work. Or I'm going to reparent myself as the mom that I never had. Again, that's important. And even if we had a great mom and a great father, we still probably carry some father wounds and mother wounds and all that other stuff. And so there may be those areas where they fell short. Well, let's give them a bit of compassion and grace and be like, okay, they probably fell short because they were doing the best they could in most cases. But here's the thing that I would share with you that would be good is let's also give our child the permission to play. It's all part of our healing is the permission to play. It's not all about doing the work. I think one of the biggest problems that I see in the men's workspace is that it is just about work. Most of the time, it's really not about bringing a sense of fun and pleasure, a sense of enjoyment. It's, no, we got to do the work. Well, yes, there is some need to do the work. Men need to show up and do some of that inner work on themselves. But speaking as someone who's an inner work champion, I mean, I've been doing inner work since easily since like 2004. So over 20 years of meditation and internal work and all kinds of things. Let me tell you something. At a certain point, it just becomes a grind. Healing our wounds doesn't have to be this laborious act of grinding. Healing our wounds can bring a sense of play. And I'll use a good example of this, and this is something that's directly relevant um, to my own childhood wounding. Recently, I found out about this game called Say No More. Say No More. It's this funny, hilarious game on Steam. You get to play the role of an intern, and you're going through and you're being basically bombarded with a bunch of very unreasonable requests at a corporate workspace. I'm sure we're all familiar with that. We all know what that's like, right? And in the game, you get to say no. In fact, you're encouraged to say no. Well, it was funny and hilarious, but at the same time, it made me think, like, how useful would it be to bring the game of that kind of game into this quote unquote work? What if, for example, I were able to go back to my inner child and say to my inner child, hey, guess what? You get to say no to my stepmom when she tells you have to clean the house. You get to say no to my dad when he tells you that you're a disappointment. You get to say no to all those things. You get to do that here in this environment because you have complete control over the environment. Like, could I have done that as a kid? Probably not. I probably would have gotten a beating, to be honest with you. But guess what? I'm not that child anymore. But that inner child doesn't always know that. That inner child doesn't always realize that. And the thing is that the inner child a lot of times thinks, okay, well, we've got to heal our inner child. So what do? We default toward work. Okay, we're going to go and we're going to do this massive amount of shadow work. We're going to do all these other things. And speaking as someone who's been trained in shadow work and has done a fair amount of the work, I think it's really absolutely important. And it's helpful. And there's something to be said for also just being able to play some inner game with ourselves. Bringing a sense of play and using that play as a form of empowerment. When's the last time that you brought a sense of play to that deep inner work? A sense of joyfulness, a sense of, hey, I can do this because this is actually going to bring me a sense of levity and joy. That's what we need. And it's funny because like a couple years ago, I was in the process of learning how to say no more often than I had. I had been that guy who was a people pleaser. I would get walked all over. Even a year ago, I was still working on learning how to say no more often. I had an interesting prompt that I would use to help with that process because I'd be like, okay, I need to say no. And I wasn't good at saying no because a lot of times I felt like if I said no, I was going to basically get the experiences that I'd had early on. And here's the thing. Me not saying no was really a reflection of those early childhood wounds. If I said no as a kid, I knew what I was going to get. I was going to get yelled at. I was going to get beaten. Something like that was going to happen. But the thing is that again, like I was rooting that ability to say no in early circumstances instead of being able to say no from the perspective of I'm an adult. I'm a man at 46, at 47, at 48, and I can actually say no from a place of empowerment. And that no is actually going to be one of the most powerful tools that I have at my disposal. I can say no because I'm not in that position. And that's where we bring that sense of interplay into this work. Because in a very real sense, that inner child is afraid to say no. Or that inner child's afraid to, of certain things. The inner child, as long as they're afraid, they're going to act from that place, and that place is going to pull at you. And if you think like, oh, I got to do this work, I've got to do all this hard work in order to get past this point, in some ways, you're actually really reinforcing the thing because what's happening is you're like, oh, okay, this is a laborious task I've got to do. But if we treat no as a game, if we treat other things, if we treat our wounds as games to work through and heal and resolve, but we do it in a way where we bring some playfulness to it, what we're really doing is we're empowering our inner child. Our inner child has the opportunity to take on a different role, the role that the inner child should have gotten so much earlier. I can say no from a place of joyfulness and levity. Or I can choose to have the conversations that I'm not having and actually have that conversation. And it doesn't have to be this heavy, hard conversation. It can actually just be this very enlightening form of liberation and relaxation. These are all things that we can choose to do, but a lot of times we don't. We don't choose to do them. We get caught up in the heaviness of the work. So healing our parent wounds isn't just about doing some heavy work, okay? Yes, there may be some heaviness there. There may be some things that we have to face. But it is also about giving ourselves an alternate route so that we're not living in the trauma. We're not living in the past. We're not letting the pain turn into suffering. And that's where we bring in a sense of play. What would it be like, for example, to say no in a really, really silly way? And I'll model it here for you. No, 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 no. We're having fun. We get to have that fun. We get to reclaim our inner childhood. Healing our parent wounds isn't just about reparenting ourselves. It is about rechilding ourselves as well. It is about bringing the child back out in a way that is healthy and empowering and loving and gives that child a voice without letting the child run the show in unhealthy ways. Because a lot of times when our child takes the wheel and is driving the car, usually the child's driving from a place of reaction. And guess what? We're going to play bumper cars at that point. Bump, 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 bump. Nobody wants to play bumper cars in a way that's not fun. And the child doesn't mean to do it that way. The inner child is just reacting. But if we say to the inner child, here's a play, here's like a little steering wheel that you can play with, and I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to respond to you, and we're going to have some fun, and I'm going to reparent you, but I'm also going to rechild you. I'm going to let the inner child have his moment of being a child in a healthy and empowered way. Then what we end up bringing in is a deeper sense of healing and growth and transformation. We don't have to have men's work doesn't have to just be men's work. It can also be men's play. And I think a huge part of certainly how I'm going to be moving forward with the way that I coach and work with clients is also how I play with clients. How I bring a sense of play into the equation. How I bring a sense of joy and fun and relaxation. Because we need that. We need to feel a sense of joy, relaxation, and presence. And when we don't have that, we're losing out on something essential. How many times have you gone and you've been like, oh, I gotta talk about my issues, right? That's one of the reasons, quite honestly, that I mean, I've done therapy before and I found it helpful, but it's one of the reasons why, in general, therapy is not something that vastly appeals to me because I can spend all day talking about my shit. That doesn't necessarily resolve it. Having a healthy sense of play and fun does. And I'm not talking about numbing out. I've definitely done that before where I've numbed out to video games late at night because it's been okay, it's been a long day and I need something to soothe myself and I'm going to go play video games at night. I don't really do that anymore. I'm a lot more mindful about my video game play usage because the way that I look at it is if I'm playing those games, they should bring a sense of fun. I should be enjoying it. And if I'm not enjoying it, why am I even playing that game? But it's the same thing with our inner rechilding. We have to bring a sense of play and fun. I don't even mean we have to. I mean, we can choose to. So let's reframe that. We can choose to bring a sense of play and fun. Because if we say we have to, or at that point, it becomes fucking work. We're not here to work, right? Not all the time. Part of men's healing is getting the opportunity to be the child you never got to be. It's being that child too, not just with yourself, but with other men. It's having healthy, cooperative, fun friendships instead of having competitive. I gotta beat you to the tar. It's actually having fun with your brothers. Some of the best fun that I have is with other men in my life, whether it's playing a board game or it's doing martial arts sparring or it's getting together and playing some type of elaborate charades or doing something else. I think more men need this. We need to have fun. We need to play. And that need, it's not about work. It's about actually incorporating a sense of, hey, reaching out to the inner child and reaching out to those other men's inner childs and putting their hands in hands and being like, hey, you guys can play together. You can have fun together. And you don't have to beat up on each other. You don't have to put pressure on each other. You don't have to compete with each other for everything. You can actually just have some real honest to goodness fun. So, here's my prompt for you today. What would it be like to not just reparent your child, but also re-child your child? To give your child a chance to be the healthy boy he always wanted to be. And I leave you with that. And I'd love to read your comments. Love for you to share your thoughts. And if you're on YouTube, to subscribe and all that other good stuff. And same for here on Men's Mysteries, like subscribe. But more than that, I'd really love to read your comments and thoughts on this. Like, what would it be like if you've re-childed yourself? I'd love to hear like what that looks like. And if you haven't, like, what would it look like to give yourself that opportunity to let your child out? Because that's part of how we do our healing. It's not just doing the work, it's bringing back the play. Thanks for watching and have a great day.